Thanks for taking out the time to join me today.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Yeah. Okay, so first we'll start with introductions. I'll go first. So I'm Ivanka, a high school student who's really passionate about climate change and sustainability, especially methane emissions. And I first got interested in this field when I did my research project at the U of M. And so I've been working mostly with livestock, and I'm excited to hear from someone who does something a little bit different than that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Excellent. Would you like me to give my background?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Jen Glass. I'm a professor at Georgia Tech, and I am from Olympia, Washington State. Born and raised there. I went to the University of Washington for my undergrad. Then I went to Arizona State in Tempe, Arizona for my grad. I went to Caltech in Pasadena, California for postdoc. And then I came to Georgia Tech in Atlanta about 12 years ago.
That's really cool. So how did you get started in the methane space or greenhouse gases?
Yeah, I well, kind of like you, I was really passionate in high school about climate because this issue has been going on for so long that even back then we were already pretty knowledgeable about what was going on. And so I also, like you, kind of got started just being passionate about climate change and what we could do about it. But as I went through college, I realized I wanted to become a professor. That could be my way of kind of contributing knowledge to the climate change field and just getting to work with a lot of excited young people who are passionate about it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm excited to go into that field myself. Can you share a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, and so I have a lab at Georgia Tech, and we do a combination of field work and lab work and computer work. And we do research to understand the microorganisms that are really at the base of all of chemical cycling, especially methane. We are interested also in how they interact with abiotic processes. So there's this kind of intermingling between those two. But I'm really fascinated by microorganisms that live in natural environments, especially really extreme environments, and how they do what they do, especially environments with lots of methane. And there's a lot we still don't know about where methane comes from in those environments, the pathways, and then the pathways by which it's processed, by which it's oxidized. And we hope that learning more about those things can inform more applied methods to use what nature has already evolved to hopefully help consume more of the methane before it reaches the atmosphere.
Well, that's exciting. Can you talk about some of the projects you're doing?
Yeah, so we have a project so we have one that's under the seafloor that we've been working on for a long time. So we have samples that were actually drilled from upwards of 100 meters beneath the seafloor off the coast of Oregon. And it's really all the coasts when you go a few kilometers out or so, and you go to the bottom of the ocean. We probably don't think about that so much because it's covered in water, but our coastlines hold enormous amounts of all this carbon is coming off from land sources via rivers, right, and being dumped in. And then there's also algae growing in these productive nutrient-rich waters, and they're sinking to the bottom. So there's a lot of carbon in those clays at the bottom of the ocean. And then that carbon is broken down over millions of years, and some of it becomes, a lot of it eventually turns into methane. And so these are actually the largest methane deposits on Earth is underneath our coastal sediments. Sediments or mud, basically. It's just mud on the seafloor. And they are stored in hydrates, which are solid. So at the kind of cold, high pressure temperatures on the seafloor and under the seafloor, you can store, actually methane is naturally stored as a solid. It's got methane and then it's got water molecules. And at those temperatures and pressures, it solidifies like almost like ice. And so we've studied a lot about the organisms that live amongst that substance and whether they have anything to do with that substance, making it or breaking it down or consuming the methane. And they probably do have, we found that there are proteins that we can study in the lab from these organisms that are active on the hydrates that actually affect the growth of the hydrates. And so there's probably a biological process that influences these, even though we don't typically think about biology in that extreme environment. And then we also study other extreme environments. Right now, we have a NASA-funded project where we're studying an environment that's in the Gulf of Mexico, which is there's a brine on the seafloor, and there's tons and tons of methane in this brine. And the origin of that actually is not exactly known, whether it's produced in situ or whether it's made in the mud under it, but it's super, super, super salty and it holds a lot of methane. And is actually supports a big kind of microbial ecosystem that kind of floats right above the brine. And it's a really fascinating ecosystem. We like to call it a redox rainbow, like redox, redox chemistry, and then rainbow because there's everything there. And so that's our little joke on that. But we're studying exactly which organisms do what to consume the methane there. And it's really great because we have, over the last couple decades, the scientific community has gathered so much DNA sequence data, and also now RNA and protein data, and there's these huge databases. And so you can compare your data with everybody else's, and you can zero in and figure out exactly what organism now is doing what with what enzyme. So as long as somebody has studied the enzyme in the lab and you can be pretty sure that you know the sequence, you can compare it and find it in the environment and kind of know then what's going on in the environment. With organisms that are very, very, very hard to grow in the lab. So we can just get sequences straight out of the environment and study those to understand what's going on naturally for things that we probably can never really reproduce in the lab because it's just all the conditions are just so hard to reproduce.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're doing all these projects all across the country. So like, who do you work with to make that all happen?
Well, the beauty of it is that a lot of it is samples that are very collaborative. And so the students now, I hardly ever go to the field. Sometimes students go out on cruises with other labs and collect the samples. That was what happened for the Gulf of Mexico work. The Hydrate Ridge work, to be honest, that work, I did get to go there on a cruise once during my postdoc, but the samples we used were mostly drilled when I was in high school. So, and then preserved. So the nice thing is that people have gone on a lot of expeditions already and then saved samples that can be used. And so it's kind of, I like to think of it as being also a bit more sustainable to kind of see what's out there to use, because people have done so much work and collected so many things. And then sometimes the portion of that actually gets studied is kind of small, and there's all kinds of other stories to be told. So I like to go in and kind of find those stories. So we don't actually now go to the field all that much because we have so many samples to work on already. But I do like to give the students the opportunity to go on like a scientific cruise if they want to. Yeah.
That's cool. So who's in just your lab?
My lab is really small right now. As you've probably heard, there's some issues with federal funding in America these days. And that is definitely hitting our campus. It's hitting everyone very hard. So my lab is very small right now. We have just 2 PhDs. In the past, it's been a lot bigger than that. And I've also had a lot of undergrads. I typically do have undergrads, but right now it's just pretty small. During the school year, we'll probably have some undergrads too, but very small because of, a little hard times with federal funding. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's hard. But hopefully it gets better soon.
We hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the exciting past projects you've done?
Yeah, well, we studied proteins that bind to those hydrates. We did high pressure experiments. I had a PhD student who did her whole PhD during COVID doing high pressure experiments, making that methane solid in the lab, and then exposing fluorescently labeled proteins and studying how they bind to it. And we've done a bunch of other work also related to the Earth's evolution and how methane has influenced that, and also other greenhouse gases. I'm also very interested in nitrous oxide, which is often kind of listed as the water is very much, the most important, but we're, so CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide are the 3 anthropogenically released greenhouse gases. So nitrous oxide is another one, and we've been very interested in kind of reconstructions of those greenhouse gases over Earth history to understand how they were important like billions of years ago. So that's another thing. Now, these days, I'm modern Earth, but I've been in the past very interested in also Earth evolution, and yeah.
Well, that's really exciting. Mm-hmm. So all this stuff is really cool. So how do you hope that people use all your research to impact climate change?
So there is a huge amount of data out there that is accessible to everybody. Knock on wood, we keep these federally funded databases available so that continues to be available to everybody. But I am excited about using the information we have about all of the proteins, the enzymes that nature and microorganisms and evolution has created, this huge biological resource, right, in life. And we know a lot about what the human body does, our proteins, but we still don't know what all of them do. But there are just so many. There's basically a protein for every single chemical process you could think of, and then many thousands and millions probably that we don't know. And microorganisms are really good at chemistry. And so they've evolved these. I'm just fascinated by how these proteins have come about and how each have this very, often very specialized reaction that they do. And we don't even know all of those, but there's many of those that could have really important, technological usage in an industry for separating different rare earth elements. And we need to really mine what's, so to speak, mine in terms of, databases, what's out there, and learn more about it and how we can use that information instead of using like really nasty corrosive chemicals that are really, hard on the people that use them. I've actually just been reading this book, Cobalt Red. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It came out a few years ago, but it's a very hard read. But basically, it really talks about how awful these conditions are for the in the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, for the people that mine the cobalt that then goes into lithium cobalt oxide, rechargeable batteries. And it is awful, absolutely awful. Unimaginably horrible. And so even as we think we're getting more renewable energy, the conditions at which people are having to live to for us to basically have cell phones, it is really, really, really bad. And so if we, and we have a lot of work to do to improve those conditions, and maybe a tiny bit of it is just to change some of the processes by which these extractive processes are happening. It kind of sounds like a fantasy right now, but I think a lot of things used to sound like fantasies and are now real. So yeah, it's academia. A lot of it is, what I love about it is also it's fundamental science. So you just never know what you're going to find out that's going to be useful, right? Yeah. And so there's a lot of stories like that. We go out and we study things that sound totally irrelevant and weird, and then who knows, somebody finds a use for it that you wouldn't have expected. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what'll happen in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of new technologies coming out, like artificial intelligence and stuff. So do you use any of that in your research?
So, I am probably the least AI using person I know. I know a lot of people who are really excited about it. I'm a real holdout on using it. I do see benefits in it. For instance, I'm not very good at coding, like computer coding, and that's always been a hang up for me because everything is now coding. And I know you're going to ask about later about advice, and of course, learning to code is a big piece of advice I give everybody, and just learning different languages, learning R, learning Python, but yeah, etc. So I wish I had done a lot more of that through college, because that would have served me very well, because now I'm trying to learn it in my 40s, and it's going to, just learning any language, it's slower when you're older. So, but for instance, AI and just the Google results now integrate kind of some AI right at the beginning of them. And I find that helpful, because I can actually take those little pieces of code and then try to, do it myself in a way that it would have taken me a lot longer. So that's one benefit. But I think that's very rudimentary compared to what some people are doing with it. And I think I think it has a lot of exciting purposes. People in our department are using it for weather forecasting and all kinds of exciting things. I do think there's limitations on and hazards. I mean, one of which is the incredible amount of energy and kind of environmental injustice that can be associated with the data centers that are powering this all. So I think as a society, we need to reckon a lot more with where these resources are coming from, right? Like, where's the cobalt, where's the lithium coming from, where's the energy for the data centers coming from every time we, go ahead and pull up ChatGPT, especially those of us that are really kind of socially, like to consider ourselves socially consciously minded, we need to kind of be thinking about these things, right? I do think I'm excited to hear what all is exciting to you all. I mean, I think in terms of writing, I have serious reservations, as a lot of students do too, because I think a lot of people recognize if you let AI write for you, you're depriving your own brain of learning. Yeah. And then you're just going to you're not going to have that ability later on, and it's much harder to learn it, So it's really just you're just kind of starving yourself of skills if you rely too much on it. And it's like anything else, it can get kind of addictive, and you just start to rely on it more and more. Yeah. You can't write yourself, you're in real trouble. And also, writing yourself really helps process like concepts. That for me is a big piece of advice I have, is to be writing for students to just you love writing, because if you want to go into academia, most of us do a lot of writing, and you can't really avoid that. And I love writing. I thought I wanted to be, if I didn't become a scientist, I wanted to be like a science journalist or another form of writing, because I just love writing, and I kind of love the process of moving things around on the page and getting in my brain kind of clicks in and processes information as those words move around. Yeah. So that's I'm rambling on, but that's kind of my thoughts on AI. I'd like to hear what you think it's going to be really useful for. Like, what are you most excited about AI being used for? Because I can get more excited if I know some of the purposes that you all are excited about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really important to use it responsibly. And there definitely need to be like, not regulations, but like some more rules around it so that people can't just like do whatever they want with it and then it turns out badly. But I think it's really helpful sometimes. Like I'm stuck on something, I just need like a few ideas and it gives me them in a way that Google can't. Yeah. So that's exciting. I never use it for like writing for me because, you know, I want to write it myself because that helps me too, just like you said.
Right.
And yeah.
The other thing that kind of worries me about is so I've been very involved in Wikipedia editing and Wikipedia pages. And my understanding is it pulls a lot from Wikipedia to finish. Basically, it's just kind of finishing sentences, right? And so like it's a language model. And so I worry that people will rely too much on the output that's basically just regurgitating kind of from Wikipedia, and that will ultimately, people won't go and check their original sources. But I think these are all things that are pretty well known now, hopefully, for students, and they know to use it responsibly. But yeah.
Do you have any other advice for me or other people who want to go into this field?
Yeah, I think getting really comfortable with failing and not being the best in your class, and being wrong, and asking questions, but just being comfortable with being wrong. That was something that took me a long time to accept, was I didn't know all the answers. That's the whole point of science, is that you don't know the answer going in, and no one can tell you. You're in uncharted territory, and you just are you know, and that's scary at the beginning, especially for someone like me who came through and thought I was like all A's and had to be really perfect, and then learning, oh, I'm gonna have to be wrong a lot, and be comfortable in that, and be comfortable saying I'm wrong, and learning, and asking for advice a lot, like asking other people to read my work and for comments on it, actual humans, not just AI. Because ultimately it's humans that'll, at least for now, that'll hire you and get you promoted and things. So yeah, all those kind of things I think are, you probably, you know, all the rest of the advice you probably already know, but yeah, writing and being willing to fail and get back up and just try again, learn from your mistakes all the time. Yeah.
The thing that's most exciting to me about research is that no one knows the information yet, so you get to learn something new.
Yes. Although there is something, well, one other thing I will say of advice is something I do notice lately, and I sound like I don't know, I don't want to sound like I do notice sometimes students don't know that there is a really long literature in the field. So even though we are at the front of it, right, there are, you know, decades and decades and decades and decades worth of information that led up to now. And that's something I really want to, I hope actually that's a place where AI could be useful in helping to find all the relevant work in your field, and then like really carefully digesting that information into your own head. Because sometimes I hear, and actually I've heard a lot of faculty say this, that this is happening more and more, is that students don't always know the whole backstory. And it's hard because it's a moving target, and we're all moving forward in time, and we all have more and more and more papers to understand the further we move in time. But it is really important to just know that even that you're at the forefront, you're building on all this previous work, and just really try to dive into that previous work. And your mentors will be so impressed if you do that, because yeah, it's kind of it's a really important, that's kind of the difference between like being a scholar and a scientist, is this, and you have to do both to really be in academic research. You really need to be both a scholar and a scientist. So the scholar side is knowing all that came before. You can't know all of it, of course, you're going to miss some, but like knowing really the foundations of the field that you're working in. And it's going to be such a specific field. That's the thing, is you're going to be working in a pretty defined area topic. So you should be able to pretty much, you know, I'm talking about as a graduate student. This is not something you're doing, but eventually, once you really are working on your own project, there will be that literature. And it's really important to dive deeply into that and yeah, get to know that. So it's hard though, because a lot of it is behind paywalls, and this is a big problem in science, is that yet another of the many battles that we have to fight is to get publishers to not make people pay so much taxpayer dollars for articles. So anyway,
Yeah.
many big issues that we're struggling with. Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you're so passionate about it. We really need people out there like you're doing science communication, telling people why this is important, why they need scientists, why federal workers are important. So thank you for your help spreading that information. It's
of course.
Essential. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for taking out the time to join me today. It was a really great talk.
Excellent. Okay, you take good care.
You too.
Podcast.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.